Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm actually kind of flying into the radar here in Gramercy Park, and I've got the camera set up next to the Christmas tree, and behind it is the central statue of Edwin Booth, who was the brother of John Wilkes Booth, whose claim to fame is the assassin of Abraham Lincoln. And behind that is the Hanukkah menorah. So it's an interesting place to do a show. What I forgot to do yesterday, because this is still December 16th, is mention what I forgot to do today about mentioning yesterday was not only did I have this profound experience working at the Village Scandal Hat Shop on 7th Street and 3rd Avenue, where I was talking about selling a hat to a homeless person and how important it is to have a sense of abundance in our life, that even if times are hard right now, we can create models of something greater to shoot for in the future. And that when we have these, when we fall into depressions or anger or victimization, what we do is we hurt creating these models. So even though I felt bad that I had sold a $50 hat to a homeless person, I had to remember that this was also a musician and an artist, and this hat inspired him. And for me to question that choice would also be to question his ability to manifest and bring abundance into his life. And that's the kind of thing that we want to be able to encourage in other people and in ourselves. And then I also said that just like we can have a home that, you know, when I'm saying we, I'm sort of assuming that I'm connecting to people who pretty much have the same situation that I do. We're not sleeping in the street, we're not homeless, even though I'm beginning to realize how very many people are homeless. Well, for sure, if you're homeless, you're not going to be having cable, because where's the cable going to go to? So I think I'm pretty safe in saying whoever's watching this is not homeless. And if you are homeless and you're watching it, it means that you are watching it because of the generosity of somebody else who's letting you stay in your place. And that's a very valid aspect of our civilization too, is how we work together and how we share. I'm sitting here watching whether my umbrella is going to fall down. Let me see if I can adjust it. I don't want my camera to get rained on because it's sort of drizzly. Okay, so if we're sharing our house with somebody who's homeless, that's very valuable too, because we need all people to help us make our experience be complete. And I'm thinking that maybe, oh dear, it did fall down. Maybe, I'll just keep doing my blah, blah, blah while I talk to you. Maybe this horrible stuff of all this homelessness and people being cast out of their houses, you know, by the housing courts, because Victor's been telling me about what that's like, because he works to try to protect people from doing that. Oh, this is going to be major. Okay, we're back again. I also am a little bit distracted because I don't know if the gardener's going to chase me out, if he'll go for the subtleties of, you know, non-commercial versus, I'm sitting on a shoebox here, non-commercial versus commercial, because he might just see a tripod, but I think he might be distracted because it's got an umbrella over it, so it looks pretty safe. That's what I'm hoping. Anyhow, what I'm thinking, going back to my stream of thought here, that the crisis that we're facing right now with the homelessness, where you've got people who are definitely Manhattan residents, but they can't make a go of it. And people are being cast out of their houses, and they're sleeping on the streets, and they're having to fight, you know, really difficult conditions, or they're living in these sort of shelters, which I have to admit I haven't ventured into, but I guess that probably is something I should be doing. So, you know, to bring to you, people who are watching cable, a complete experience and understanding of what's going on. This might be the transition, the painful transition that's necessary before we start to kick in models of design that Buckminster Fuller was talking about. That maybe, you know, if you look around at these little boxy ways that we create our houses, maybe they're not the most efficient way. Like, I remember in the 60s and the 70s, city planning at UC Berkeley was a big deal. And it seems as though this was the highest consciousness happening department. And the idea was, I mean, we didn't know about feng shui or vastu. I didn't know about anything, actually. I was just watching this from being a high school kid. But my mom was working for somebody who, Eric Jansch, who was doing a lot of work with the consciousness raising situation then. So the idea is that if we're living in little boxy houses, then we have little boxy lives. You have a mother and a father and then a couple kids. And as I was explaining in my last show with the 5 elements and willpower and being able to develop focus, but how the elements go along, and that the Hindu marriage law that was changed to be more in sync with the West had left behind the concept that a man could have more than one wife, but also left behind the concept that a wife could have more than one husband, kind of working more with nature, that we sort of grow and we change. And that when we just glom onto the willpower model, then people stay in suffocating relationships for the sake of upholding a commitment and an agreement. Now, being a woman, I think we tend to be more appreciative of focus and commitment. It's something about how we're built. But at the same time, I think we can also see, and I know a lot of women who've been on both sides of the fence in one lifetime in both cases, either being the other woman or being the woman that was left. And either way, it's a painful situation. But what I'm saying is that maybe the Buckminster Fuller models of how to live more efficiently, where you can have, say, you know, the kids that are running around, maybe the mom wants a break. And so maybe the way the whole architecture is laid out, it would be easier to babysit for the kids and sort of trade around who's watching over them without it being such a major commitment that a woman has to totally give up her dream and her aspiration because now it's time to raise the kids. And then the guy starts feeling all sort of roped into something, and because his wife's so exhausted, but more than exhausted, sort of unfulfilled, only doing certain things, that if that, you know, taking care of kids, if that was spread out over a whole group, then maybe she could, having lived her dream more, be the kind of inspiration to her husband, so he's not having to go out and find, you know, other people who are admiring his work. Because my experience has been in the past, when I've noticed I've gotten the most male attention, it seems as though men really respond when you admire what they're doing. And this gets back to the David Data model, that for a man, the male energy is to be focused on their mission, on what they need to do before they die. That's the male model. And the female model is to totally be focused on relationships. How are things going with the one that she has picked to give her energy and her Shakti to, so that he can achieve that dream. And that they say, if a woman was president, she'd just be obsessing over her relationships, I guess, with all her constituents. And men would sort of barrel along and just say, well, am I getting my job done? And you can see, maybe because I'm menopausal, I can really tune into the male thing about getting your mission done. And that, you know, come hell or high water, you do it. Molly had pointed out that I don't seem to be sensitive to my audience. I'll just sort of soldier along, where she's more sensitive to how are people liking her. And I have even considered insults on YouTube to be an accomplishment, because I'm getting people to pay attention and listen long enough to sit down and to tap out, you know, an insult to me. At least it shows a connection. Again, getting back to what my dad said, and that is that controversy is very important to our advancement. So we need to create enough space for where that controversy can happen. But I think we should also be able to be really healthy and robust and to allow free expressions of rants and raves. I think that's important too. So now somebody who in media is all driven by, you know, how people are paying attention to it and what are the ratings like. So this means the power is in the viewer. So I think a lot of these technologies that I was talking about before, the viewer has to do some brain work themselves to figure out what's going on and start to demand what they want. And I'm also saying that this whole notion of consumerism being a bad thing, I think that's a co-opted operation there that the International Criminal Drug and Weapons Syndicate is doing. If corporations can sell us toothpaste, they can certainly do the opposite, which is figure out how to hide their machinations. I pointed out that I slipped in under the wires when I got my cellular telephone license that eventually sold for, my share alone was $5 million. And this was an example of distributing wealth through capital. It was the ownership of the right to broadcast a signal in 13 counties in Kentucky that made me so rich. It had nothing to do with my labor. So, and I would like to think that I was able to take that wealth, have an experience with it, parlay it into something that had social merit. But right now, I'm constantly emphasizing to my viewers that you have to get savvy and do the work from your side. And it's great to be on YouTube, to pay attention to things. It's absolutely great to type out comments if they're compliments or if they're nasty. Either way, they should be filled with information, because if they're filled with information, then we can start working with it and creating something greater. I would also like to say that I flew into the radar a little bit myself, making a provocative suggestion that a man whose work I very much admired, somebody who'd been doing a lot of work in the 9/11 TV fakery, showing that the images that we saw on television during 9/11, or that you saw, I didn't see them because I was in an ashram in India, September 11th, 2001. But the images that you saw, dear gentle viewers, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, TV and YouTube, those were fake images. Those were generated with computers. So somebody who's been doing a lot of work on this, I said, you know, my Christmas wish would be to have some intimate time with you. Now, I wasn't able to jump on the internet right after that on Saturday. I posted it on Friday. I went to Harold Channer's party. You know, I was supposed to be helping Harold Channer set up, but instead I thought, you know, I woke up in the morning, I didn't have any idea what I was going to do. I just followed the energy. So I threw this out. It was only about 6 minutes of me sort of dancing around and saying, hey, Ozzy, why don't you come on to New York and sort of let's see what happens. And the idea of that, I think, in following the intelligence of my female body, is to create a manifestation, to bring things out of just exploring and exploring and exploring the air element. That's what the internet is all about. But bringing it into physicality. That's why I'm coming to you from Gramercy Park, December 16th. Somehow, miraculously, the gardener is letting me carry on. And I'm trying to get a message to all of you, not just to Ozzy, but to saying, we need to manifest. We need to, first of all, pay attention, understand what's happening into our life with our enthusiasm, our joy, with our depressions, with our angers, work through it in such a way that we stay more to the joy and the enthusiasm, if not exclusively. And there's an art, by the way, to being exclusively in the joy and the enthusiasm. And that means paying attention to humility, understanding when it is our willpower and when it is the play of nature. And if we can't face up to the 5 elements directly, then we acknowledge the masters who've gone before us who've been able to do it. But we don't want to hang out under the master's shadow either, because there comes a time where if you've got a really good master, he's going to really give you one big kick in the butt to say, you know, get out and figure this stuff out on your own. And I wanted to go through my sexy fan mail. I can't possibly recapitulate it here at Gramercy Park, but what I can recapitulate are some of my feelings about it. I've gotten different responses from different men who really want to make a connection, and some of them have profoundly touched my heart. They've really affected my energy level, my inspiration. And one in particular I can think seems to be a young man, and of course, you know, a woman of my age, I'm very concerned about, you know, distracting anybody who hasn't had a lot of experience that years gives you. I don't want to take advantage of anybody, but this person was doing what I was trying to do for a couple days now, for even a couple of weeks. And every time I sat down, you know, with all my gear, now it's over at Harold Channer's, which is why I'm doing this solo with one camera, I never quite got up to it. I did other things. I connected with Molly. I got some good shows with Molly over Skype. I got a show that initially I wasn't happy with, but later on I grew to be happy with, which is the guy who was descended from the man who started National Cash Register and who's now a truck driver. I got a good show with him, but none of that was actually what I wanted to do, which was to explain what the womb chakra was, that how women's bodies are built in such a way that we have an extra energy center, and this extra energy center can be enjoyed more by them, by society, particularly by other men who experience this womb chakra in an intimate way. And intimacy is a very delicate concept too. Yes, it's physically, you know, when you take a man's body and a woman's body and you see how they complement each other. But it can also be taken subtly too, and there's an intimacy that goes on between broadcaster and broadcasted too. And in Manhattan Neighborhood Network, it's pretty much a one-way thing. Me talking to you. Every once in a while, a couple of you precious people out there send me, you know, you drop me a line with information that's valuable too, and some of you give me some checks. Not very many, and I hate to push it because my heart always goes out to you because you're paying $50 a month for this. I get zip, zero, nothing from it, neither do any of the other producers. However, I also want to say, like that guy with the hat, I don't want to be keeping you from your abundance. You should be paying. Okay, so I ran out of batteries in the park, and I had to take my string off my hat. So I almost thought I lost it, had to go back and found it. Just one person stepped on it in Gramercy Park. So that means like I got their energy now for that. The other thing is while I was coming back on the elevator, somebody was throwing out a feather bed. And these are feather beds like they have in Switzerland, and you're like really warm. But can you imagine here in what it's like that here I am talking about homelessness, and you know, apartment space is so limited that people throw out really good stuff. That's how it goes. So I have about 10 minutes left to sort of explain that after I posted that, you know, invitation to Ozzy bin Oswald, that's the handle of a guy who nobody even knows what he looks like, to come to New York. And the idea is that the TV fakery is something that the 9/11 truth movements will not touch. And then I've showed you some material that would explain why they might not want to touch that. And that is because it mostly implicates the media. So for people like us who are public access, for people like us who are on YouTube, we can post whatever we want. We're not restricted by censorship and so on. But I think there's an internal restriction that we should be aware of. How much information can you give so that an audience advances in their sense of power and abundance? And how much do you give where they will just disconnect? It doesn't make much sense. So what I was saying is, in wanting to go through my mail, particularly my sexy fan mail, and to talk about what inspired me, I was particularly struck by one person who initially I thought either didn't understand the 9/11 material or was sort of playing dumb, or actually it came, I think I first came to he first came to my attention, blasting caps, on my posting of the Blacksburg massacre. So I think in the back of my mind, I was sort of thinking, well, maybe weirdos will come out for this one. And the nature of his comments were very provocative. But it took me months to realize that he had somehow tuned in to a deeper level of knowledge than I had at that time. And I think what he was tuning into was that sort of whining and complaining that goes on when people start to uncover one layer of conspiracy, but they don't go the distance. And that's why I'm saying a good master who really has knowledge more than you do will take, and if he sees that you're a good student, that you have potential, he'll definitely kick you in the butt and tell you to start figuring this stuff out by yourself. And I think part of the figuring the stuff out by yourself means how much can you start to give back, either with the comments on YouTube, be they positive or negative, or the comments that you send me in the mail if you're my Manhattan Neighborhood Network viewers. But there's a part of gaining your independence and your sovereignty which has to do with charity, deciding what is going on in the world that needs to go on with more power, and for you to participate in that. Not for me to feel sorry you're paying $50 a month for cable and we producers aren't getting anything from it, but to say, give something, because whatever you give, that energy, just like this guy who stepped on my string, instead of going, oh, ugh, you know, wash it and all that. What I learned in India from this master about Tantra is that you're gaining and losing energy in all kinds of different ways. And a lot of people who start to study Tantra, the exchange of energy, study a very low level. In other words, more for me and my dream, and less consideration of the other person and the other person's dream. And that's why I think Tantra, black magic, whatever, burning witches at the stake starts to come about, because the people who do tune into these methods of gaining energy and building up their energy start to get out of balance. So I'm saying the best way to stay in tune with your enthusiasm and your joy is to stay humble. And you have to stay humble if you're constantly exposing yourself to the vastness of creation, and that at the end of the day, even the avatars, and that's what Judaism talks about in creating the state of Israel. The Hasidics or the Orthodox say you can't do it until the Messiah is here. So they too have a concept of a Messiah, or of an avatar, of a human being that's so in balance. He's both human and he's divine. But the master I studied with, Sri Sai Kaleshwar Swami in the south of India, said that even an avatar is a peanut compared to the forces of nature. So if you keep that in mind, there's no amount of ratings, there's no amount of stroking that can go on by behind the scene forces that wants to keep propping you up in an incorrect direction. None of that can take the place of you actually figuring out really who you are, what the limitations are, what the strengths are, and understanding what your divine connection with the potential of that really is. And once you've done that, then you can sail away. Let me see how much time I have. 23, okay, great. So what I wanted to say was, Nico Haupt is kind of like an initiator to me. The closeness that I feel to him is tremendous. He's like a brother, he's like a father, he's like a son. But this aspect of initiator that's so important to me, and then to any of my viewers, because he gives me ideas and directions, and then I take it and go with it. I had been trying for weeks to do this show about the womb chakra, and to explain what my meditation process was, to explain how I hooked energy beyond my brain, how I started to chant with my womb. And I'm seeing now that in Blasting Cap's response, he must be tuning into another level also, in the same way, I guess the male version, or maybe these chakras are sort of a free-floating thing. It's just sort of a model that you actually have a womb in a female body and you don't see that in a male body. But what Nico was talking about, how so much knowledge is getting co-opted by obsessing in the wrong directions. And one of the wrong direction of obsession is in this whole gender issue. And I realized that I was going to, even though Molly had distracted me in a good way, and the truck driver had distracted me in a good way, I got good work, but it wasn't what I really, really wanted to do. So when Nico said this, and he said that there's so much obsession with the gay issue that people aren't having normal sexual relations. And it's sort of like, it woke me up. And I said, you know, I don't want to be a PBS dribble kind of thing where it's just talk, talk, talk. And that's what inspired me to send out the little message that I did on YouTube. And then it was followed up with Harold Channer's party. I was astonished at how people were watching, but I think it was because the 6 minutes of invitation to New York had gotten some response from those people, those of my viewers who are following the 9/11 TV fakery. And then they found out that I was trying to do the live stream from Harold's party. Now, I stayed up really late at Harold's because Harold had had a heart attack, and Maggie had also had to go to the hospital on Thanksgiving, and yet these two heroic souls kept the party happening. You know, this is the annual public access Christmas party, and they have a lot of space in Midtown, which is really valuable here in New York. And so I wanted to help them with the cleaning up, so I used to kind of keep an eye on the stream. And it seemed that as about 4 o'clock in the morning, indeed, the sound levels had dropped down, which meant that there were a lot of people logged on. Because this is just a gift to us from every cast. We need to get some firepower behind it with more servers and co-location and things like that to make it a steady stream. But I think along the way, we're going to have to figure out this donation thing, because it's not only that we need the money. To create, we need to create together, and you have to participate in that too. And part of it is giving your comments on YouTube or your letters to me if you're an MNN viewer. But when you give a check, it's your energy. Just like this guy who stepped on my string. You know, I decided I'm working with the energy. I'm not going to sterilize it. It's what I took it off so I could tie my umbrella onto the camera so the camera wouldn't get hurt while I was taping in Gramercy Park. So you can work with the energy, and you work with it in a good way. If I'm not inspirational enough, if you have a warm house, there should be some charity in some way that you can figure to give your money to share, because it's in that sharing, it's in cutting loose with some of that power that you have, that you can send it in a direction that it's going to be like an investment and come back to you and create something greater. And that's when you're going to stick on with the joy and the enthusiasm. You're going to minimize the depression. The depression comes about because you have incomplete knowledge. And I'm doing my best to expose that which I feel needs to be exposed. I feel no reservation that someone's going to wipe me out, because I have knowledge. And the knowledge is going to keep growing and growing. And even the worst bad guys, we need their connection too. They need to connect to me and to other people, because I can make their soul experience better. Not just me, but also the homeless people who will agree to have their story told. And in this way, we can all gather together the rich soul experience. In the same way that the male and the female split, the soul splits, and they split in order to have experience, to have a journey into density. And then they come together, and then you have that glorious reunion and celebration of the male and female energies. Nico helped to summarize, got me to realize I don't want to do a lot of talk about sex. And likewise, of course, I want to be discriminating about how sexual expression happens in my life too. And so I think this is something that should be honored by both men and women, that when you do have an opportunity to have physical sexual encounters, it's something that's sacred, and it's something where there should be the highest regard and respect for the gifts that the man brings to the woman and that the woman brings to the man. And in this same way, at the model of the encounter between male and female, we have the encounter between the broadcasted to and the broadcaster. And now that's starting to change, and I think that's a really exciting time. When you give your comments on YouTube, you're starting to broadcast. When you take it another step and become a producer on YouTube, you are also becoming a broadcaster. So you're starting to change that, going back and forth. But let's also honor, like Nico Haupt said, the bodies that we were born in. There's an intelligence to them. And even Ramtha, who talks about a lot, I think he talks more about soulmates than any other body of knowledge I've encountered, has said that you go with the intelligence of the body. When, there's a reason why you picked a female body or a male body, even if you might have a female or male soul in the inappropriate body. So before we start hacking away and changing, the gender of our physical body, let's gain a little bit more knowledge and see if indeed this is something that's going to bring deep satisfaction to our soul, or if it's another scam where information is being co-opted from the pharmaceutical and medical industry, because, it's a huge new market if you're going to start changing sexes. So let's see how much time. Oops, I've run over. Well, I'll put this up on YouTube. I really, really hate to edit things down to 28 minutes, because if you go for the high point and you haven't got to what led up to it, it's just like, it's like sex. You can't have the orgasm without the correct buildup. Again, these sexual models are very important to look at. We can look at the deepest and most sublime knowledge about encounters with the divine just by watching that dynamic of what goes on between men and women. So my name is Paula Gloria. This is me finishing up the show I was trying to do outside, explaining the elements. It's December 16th, and I didn't even mention that all day Saturday I was at a really wonderful bat mitzvah, and it's inspired me to do my own, even at this age in life. Thanks a lot. Over and out. Okay, sound levels are good. This is going to be definitely a YouTube add-on. It's not appropriate for Manhattan Neighborhood Network. So Ozzy, I know that we don't know who you are. You've seen me. I haven't seen you, see? So in the, what would you call it? In the spirit of full disclosure and transparency, just for you to have an idea of the nature of the invitation I'm making, I can do this. I can wear blindfolds, right? We can do it that way. And this is full disclosure. So there you are. You can't believe how I would like to see 9/11 TV fakery exposed so that people understand it and that they can respond to it in a way that makes their life better and more meaningful, more joyful, to have more ability to create abundance in their life, to have joy. So whatever it takes to do that, I'm going to be there. And when Nico Haupt indicated to me, and he didn't even try to do it, he just said something, and I realized I don't want to do PBS dribble. So, I'm just available. I get your feedback, your viewers, your commenters, and Ozzy bin Oswald too, because I know that your site has been taken down a bunch of times off of YouTube, and that's kind of scary, and people know that, and yet we keep going back to YouTube. Well, keep going back. My site hasn't been taken down. I don't want to see that kind of thing happen. But I do know it's happened to you. And so I'm just saying, for the sake of balance, take a look at what's going on and consider, getting taken down another way. Okay, take care. Have to open